I do declare we have a new decree from President Lincoln. Oh, I do love that President Lincoln. He's so tall. Free the slaves. Who's gonna do my cooking, my cleaning? Who's gonna love our children? This is so inconvenient. Hattie, we already made them 3/5 of a person. Now they want freedom? When will it end? Sorry, Miss Ma'am. I was doing the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the fishing, the washing. I baked you a cake, made you some lemonade, loved on them kids, built you a car, and built you a house. What can I do for you, ma'am? Nothing. You just keep on slaving. Yes, ma'am. A few more years won't kill him.
Bye, Phylicia.
Guess what, guys? It's Juneteenth! Juneteenth! Happy Juneteenth! It's Juneteenth! Woo! Yay, slaves! Woo! Not gay slaves. Yay, free slaves! Woo! Hi, guys. Did you miss me? Nasty. It's Phylicia. Happy Juneteenth! We are celebrating Juneteenth, the day that slaves are free. Kind of. Which used to be called Jubilee Day or Freedom Day, but Black people are so smart. They put together June 19th and called it Juneteenth. God, we're everything. Now, I know what so many of you are thinking. Like, what's Juneteenth? It's okay if you didn't know. Slaves didn't know. I didn't learn about Juneteenth when I was in school. I went to predominantly white school for my whole life. I didn't learn about Juneteenth until I became Black like 2 years ago. Different story, different day. So I understand if you don't know about Juneteenth. It's not in the history books. Juneteenth commemorates the day that the last of the slaves in a little place called Galveston, Texas, were free. It happened on June 19th, 1865. And I know what you're thinking again.
Didn't the Emancipation Proclamation happen in 1863?
It did. And you know what? The Confederate people, the slave owners were like, we ain't gonna tell them. We ain't gonna tell them. They can't read. So the slaves in Texas didn't know. They had no idea they were free. They had no clue. Isn't that terrible? So, you know, we celebrate this day. General Gordon Granger. Let me get that right. Granger? Yes. A Union general came into Texas. He rode on his horse into Texas and said to the Confederates, the slave owners,
those slaves are free.
and the slaves were free. There you go. So we celebrated. I wanted to go out and celebrate, you know, in DC. Because of COVID-19, my mom said we couldn't go and she yelled at me.
Oyokinga, yeah? Oyokinga.
So I'm down here in my basement with my own celebration. Woo! I have my spread, I have my watermelon, my strawberries, my Popeye's fried chicken. Wait a minute. If I'm eating watermelon and fried chicken, am I a stereotype? Nah. I'm actually not gonna eat in front of you guys. I don't like eating in front of people. Don't worry, I'm seeing a therapist about it. Anyway, this stuff is historic. A lot of red foods were eaten on Juneteenth once they started celebrating the holiday to commemorate the blood lost of all of the ancestors that were enslaved. So watermelon was prominent. Did you know that watermelon only became a stereotype because it was the crop that Black people, freed slaves, grew, they ate it, they sold it in order to make their income, and it became the symbol of their freedom. And of course, white people didn't like that, so then stereotype.
And if you don't know, now you know.
God, white people. But I love y'all, but white people. Strawberries were prominent, strawberries flavored desserts. Strawberry drink was prominent, but I'm bougie, so I have my strawberry kombucha in my mason jar because I'm a white woman at heart. So let's talk history for a little bit. I failed history in high school. I didn't fail, I got an 89, which is an African failing.
Oyokinga, yeah? Oyokinga.
So we have the Civil War. Civil War was when the Confederate States were trying to secede from the Union. Succeeded? Seceded. I don't know. Anyway, Civil War's happening. We're trying to get rid of the slaves. The Battle of Antietam happened in September, I believe, in September of 1862. The bloodiest battle of the Civil War happens. And Abraham Lincoln takes this opportunity to say, ha ha, if you don't drop your arms, I will free the slaves. And the Confederates were like, let's see you try! And so we did. In January of 1863, the oh my God, the Gettysburg Address! Oh. I failed history in high school. He wrote and gave and said and announced and proclaimed, essentially said, all slaves are free. But this news did not travel down to Galveston, Texas. For another 2 years, they had enslaved people. So it was January 1st that Abraham Lincoln said all slaves were to be free, and this news didn't reach Texas for some reason. It's Texas. So some of the Texas slave owners were then moving their slaves into neighboring states. I didn't take geography. I've never taken, I don't know any of the states are. So I couldn't tell you what the neighboring states are. We're the United States of America. But they were hiding their slaves in those states. And they would just move them back and forth so they wouldn't get caught.
2 years later.
Finally, a Union general, Gordon Granger, rides into Texas and says, in accordance with the proclamation, all slaves are free. So Galveston freed 250,000 slaves. I don't think I've ever seen that many people in my life. Ever. They've been enslaved for so long, they're intimidated. They see the terrible, terrible travesties happening. Families ripped apart, people being murdered, being lynched, being beaten, being whipped. So they're intimidated. So a lot of them don't leave right away. But the few of them that do, many of them were killed on their way to freedom. But those that made it through water and rivers and were hiding in forests. And that would be the location the next year of like the first Juneteenth gathering. The first Juneteenth was celebrated on June 19th, 1867 in Austin, Texas. Many of these first celebrations had the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation. Barbecues, cookouts, they would sing Negro spirituals. Swing low, sweet chariot, come forth to carry me home. The Freedmen's Bureau,
Phylicia, enunciate.
And the Freedmen's Bureau was a government agency that existed to help distribute provisions of like clothing, food and shelter, safety, security, all that jazz.
And all that jazz.
Not jazz, things that you need to live. To freed slaves and people seeking refuge. And in 1872, a group of black men came together and had $1,000 and bought land in Houston, Texas, so they could celebrate Juneteenth peacefully. Because at the time, public gatherings amongst freed slaves and black men were prohibited. So they bought this piece of land, which would then become Houston's Emancipation Park, which would then become the location of Juneteenth celebrations for years to come. But let me tell you how the white people played us. As we get into the 20th century, Juneteenth celebrations start to decline. Why, you ask? Jim Crow laws! Confederate states passed new laws and new constitutions that efficiently and effectively disenfranchised black people. The early 20th century would prove to bring economic and political struggle amongst black people. This fully led to the decline of Juneteenth celebration. Different policies excluding black people from political process. The younger generations coming up being further removed from slavery, and in order to assimilate into society, they were trying to distance themselves as far away as possible from slavery. And Juneteenth wasn't celebrated much in the northern states, simply because the slaves, because they did their job. They freed those slaves. They freed them. It's not funny. It's not funny. And we're also getting into the Great Depression, and many people, especially black people, didn't have the money to celebrate the way they would want to. And since the holiday was not recognized, they couldn't take the day off from work to celebrate. A big revival of Juneteenth began right before
Terrorists in those for the bit. They had the pet.
Before World War II, many black people were moving over to the West. They're leaving the North and leaving the South to go West because many jobs were opening up in big industries there. Jobs dealing with the war, making weapons, defense industry, making uniforms. So then they had an income to spend to celebrate the holiday. A big boom of revival for the holiday, for Juneteenth celebrations, was at the Texas State Fair.
Meet me at the fair.
And it was between the time of 1950s around-ish is when the governor of Texas truly urged African Americans and black people to go and celebrate the holiday at the state fair. I don't know what he was on, but he was it, man. So the second Great Migration, which happened between, I think, like before 1970, saw many black people going from the South to the West to the North, and they were bringing the holiday of Juneteenth with them. This also helped revamp and bring up the holiday again in different areas of the country. Yet, it is still not recognized as a federal holiday. And Texas was the first state to officially recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. Now, offices weren't closed, but they were partially staffed, aka the black people didn't go to work. That happened in 1980. So we're already in the late 1900s, and still it's not recognized as a federal holiday. And the first time that Juneteenth was brought to any kind of legislation was in 1996. I was 3 years old, and they brought it to the House of Representatives. And then in 1997, Congress officially recognized it as a holiday. Just a holiday, still not a national federal holiday, where everybody gets the day off and everyone's sitting at home watching The Price is Right in the morning, and they wait till night and there's some big firework celebration happening on TV on ABC. We still don't have that for the blacks. But we're celebrating this year.
Can white people celebrate Juneteenth?
Yes.
Yay!
And I'm sure you're wondering,
Well, how?
well, I'm gonna tell you. You know, acknowledge there was slavery in the first place. That, I think, is a big reason as to why Juneteenth is not nationally celebrated. There are still people who deny that slavery ever happened.
Hear about slavery for 400 years? For 400 years? That sounds like a choice.
You suck!
And if we don't accept and acknowledge our history, we cannot move forward. So acknowledge that slavery happened. Know that you were not a part of it. It was your ancestors. Accept it. Something that was horrible and terrible happened, but we are in a new generation, and this generation can be the one to make the change. You can support black business. Subscribe. If you're looking to drink, eat, go to a black-owned restaurant, there are many black sommeliers. Oh! Excuse me. That's why I'm single. Go to black-owned liquor stores, find black-owned restaurants, buy black-owned t-shirts. This is my We Out Harriet Tubman, given to me by Sean Carmen, thank you. There are Juneteenth-themed t-shirts going around on Instagram, so support black business. And if you go back to my last video,
What did I say?
you could read some stuff, put in a black movie, and watch. Do the same thing that you would honestly do on July 4th. What are you doing to celebrate July 4th? Taking selfies, you're making red, white, and blue themed cakes. Just make a red themed cake, red and black. You're drinking, playing games. You can even take it as an opportunity to try and educate yourself on how slavery began and how it was abolished. I don't know, do something, but celebrate it. We want to celebrate. Hello, have a whole celebration here. Hello, happy Juneteenth. We are free, kinda. It's pretty crazy to think that we're celebrating a day of freedom, and yet I would argue that black people still don't feel free. We are still being killed while being black. To put it frankly, freedom is still this odd concept that we deal with. Yes, I have the right to walk down the street, but I walk down the street, I don't feel safe. Yes, I can go to certain stores. I am employed. I am not enslaved to anyone, but it sometimes feels like I'm still enslaved to the man. But I think that's it. That's all I have to say. Oh, this one made me nervous. I had no idea what Juneteenth was. Hello, white schools. And so I was learning this too. I learned all this information and took my notes. I hope you guys took notes.
And if you don't know, now you know.
Okay, I think I got it. Black people, tell me how I did. White people, don't text me. You know what? Today is the only day you can text your black friend. Dear Phylicia, I'm sorry about slavery. And you know what? You can send your black friend some money. Reparations. And for many of you, I'm the token. Yeah, so go out, have a Juneteenth celebration. Happy Juneteenth, y'all. Somebody fact check me on all of this. I don't know if I'm right. Like Harriet Tubman once said, we out.
Bye Phylicia is brought to you by, you guessed it, Phylicia. But don't say bye, subscribe.
Ma'am, you got something to tell me? Nope. I think you do. You lying to me? No. You keeping something from me? Not a thing. What's that paper then? Fine. Read it. Man, you knows I can't read. Well, I tried.